American children grow up hearing about castles and princesses, sword fights and dragons, and then as adults we get hooked on Downton Abbey. So I think that's one of the reasons why we want to visit Great Britain. We want to see these ornate, ancient buildings that we've only read about or seen in movies, but we just don't really have here in the US. Today's video is about castles, manor houses, and their fancy gardens. I hope you hit the like button and enjoy another installment in the Britain Love Stories series. In the mid-1500s, King Henry VIII wasn't a big fan of the Catholic Church, so he made the decision to get rid of all the abbeys and monasteries in what is called the Dissolution of the Monasteries. He had become the head of the Church of England, and he ordered that over 600 of these religious houses practicing Catholicism be closed. Some of the monasteries were destroyed, and you can visit their ruins. Some have had large manor houses built on the foundation of former abbeys, and some were thankfully well preserved and converted for other uses, like this place we stayed in Derbyshire, a 13th century structure called Bredsall Priory, which is now a Marriott hotel that claims to be the oldest Marriott in the world. So today, a lot of hotels, colleges, and manor houses were formerly abbeys. And of course, Downton Abbey in real life is a place called Highclere Castle. But I promise not to get caught up in terminology. So I'm just going to carry on with sharing some of my family's favorite castles and manors. I'm not going to attempt to talk about all the castles because in total there have been more than 1,300 castles in Britain and Ireland. Not all of them are still standing. Many of them are now ruins, and some are just large grassy mounds or ditches that mark where a castle once was centuries ago. One charming English castle we have visited more than once is Eastnor Castle in Herefordshire. And we've been taking our sons to castles their whole lives, as you can tell from this ancient photo of us in front of Sudeley Castle. I distinctly remember my son's first visit to Warwick Castle. Warwick is considered by many to be the country's finest medieval castle. It's a fascinating place with over 1,100 years of history and lots of amazing things to see. But what my sons were most excited about was finally being able to buy swords. Their first sword fight was in the car park. Thankfully, they were made of foam, so these swords did not result in any injuries. When my sons were quite a bit older, we enjoyed a visit to Alnwick Castle in northern England, which is connected to the Harry Potter movies, as it was the site of filming parts of Hogwarts and some broomstick riding and Quidditch lessons for Harry and his classmates. And now for my personal favorites. When it comes to British castles, the thing I find really remarkable is that Wales, this tiny little country which is about the size of New Jersey, has been home to more than 600 castles itself. That's why Wales proudly claims more castles per square mile than any other place in the world. I think that is why when I think of Wales, I think of castles. My two favorite are the two I saw first as a college student and was lucky enough to return over 20 years later to show my sons. Carnarvon, hard to say, but I'm trying my level best, is a really fun castle to visit. It dates back to the 11th century and figures prominently in Welsh history. The town itself is very interesting and is surrounded by defensive walls, which were built at the same time as the castle. It's a famous castle for many reasons, including the fact that it was here where Prince Charles had his investiture ceremony to officially become Prince of Wales in 1969. My other favorite castle is nearby Conwy Castle. It was built in the 13th century in the walled town of Conwy. While it is mostly a ruin, the spiral staircases have been restored, which allows you to walk up to the top of the wall and walk a full circuit around the top of the castle. This gives you a good vantage point for some lovely views of the castle and the surrounding town and harbor. We have been to a large number of stunning manor houses and sprawling green gardens in our 20-plus trips together to the UK. I don't know that I would have gone so often on my own, but because Ian spent his summers in Britain as a child, with his grandparents often taking him to visit National Trust manors and gardens, it is a favorite activity of his when he's on holiday. I love seeing stunning homes with large dining rooms and ballrooms, intricate carved ceilings, and cozy libraries. I like to try to imagine what it was like to live in those stately homes hundreds of years ago. And Ian is particularly fond of tree-lined drives and vast acres of gardens, full of lush green foliage. Sometimes we will stay in one of these lovely estates that has become a hotel or B&B. Sometimes we will just visit one of them for a delicious gourmet lunch at an award-winning restaurant. Other times, we make it a fun day trip to visit a manor that is so grand, with gardens so incredibly vast and ostentatious that it's almost unbelievable. These are things you just don't see here in the US. I can't even comprehend living on a property so large, with lakes and streams and ornate bridges, which themselves are architectural marvels, with countless additional structures beyond the mansion itself, like temples and more temples, and of course a queen's temple. And I don't even know what a rotondo is. On your first visit to England, I would recommend visiting Blenheim. It's a massive country house estate that has fascinating history, as it was the birthplace of Winston Churchill. The gardens and grounds are picturesque and lovely, and also offer you a chance to play a very large game of chess. If you venture as far away from London as Derbyshire, I highly recommend a visit to Chatsworth House. This stately home also has a very interesting history. Sometimes scandalous, sometimes sad. If you want to hear all about it, the PBS documentary The Secrets of Chatsworth is definitely worth watching. The Cavendish family has been living here for nearly 500 years, one of the grandest aristocratic dynasties in England. With a strong connection to the monarchy throughout the centuries, and even the American presidency during the administration of John F. Kennedy. The gardens here are the most impressive we've ever visited. And if the place looks familiar, it might be because you watched the Pride and Prejudice film featuring Keira Knightley, and you recognize it as the home to Mr. Darcy. There is a statue of him in the gift shop, along with a sign asking you to please not kiss it. Hampton Court Castle in Herefordshire, not to be confused with Hampton Court Palace near London, is a favorite of our family. It's called a castle, but it's another example of confusing naming. It really is an amazing manor house. And while it's not an ancient castle, it is a lovely home to tour with a lot of those castle-y things an American would like to see, like an impressive medieval dining room, knights in shining armor on horseback, huge sweeping staircases with flags, more armor, swords and spears, and even a stuffed lion. And in contrast, a calm, charming Gothic chapel. Equally impressive are the really unusual gardens, complete with moats, endless flower beds, and an amazing maze. But the maze itself is only the beginning. At the center of the maze is this cool tower, and when you reach the end of the maze and enter the tower, you can then descend into this stone passageway that leads to a lovely lily pond with a path around it that goes behind this really awesome waterfall. Not to mention that after all that fun stuff, there is also a picture-perfect photo op at the entrance to the property. This concludes my video on castles and manors, but stay tuned next week for the video I've been wanting to make since I began this YouTube channel. The video where I get to talk about otters and hedgehogs, also featuring a very special guest appearance. Be sure to click that bell icon by the subscribe button.
Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please click the logo on the next screen and do something good in the world today.